All right, we are about to dive into some truly wild claims from a book called Exo-Vaticana. Now, this book connects ancient prophecies, modern-day astronomy, and some frankly shocking statements from Vatican insiders. The big question it asks is, does the Vatican have a secret plan for the arrival of aliens? Let's unpack what the author claims. And there it is. This is the bombshell claim at the heart of the entire book. It's not just saying, hey, the Vatican is open to the idea of alien life. No, it's arguing there's a deliberate, full-blown plan to welcome an extraterrestrial savior. The author links this all to ancient prophecy and a modern science project with, well, a very provocative name. So here's how we're going to break this down. First, we'll look at the main argument. Then, we're going to follow the author's own investigation to a holy mountain, uncover this mysterious Project Lucifer, dig into the theological claims, jump back to some ancient texts, and finally, see how it all supposedly connects to science today. Okay, first things first. What exactly is this alien plan that the author is so convinced exists? Here's the core thesis. The book claims that top officials inside the Vatican are methodically getting the world ready for an alien savior. I know, it sounds like science fiction, right? So, let's look at the evidence the author presents, which, believe it or not, starts with a literal journey to a very specific, very remote place. So, the investigation doesn't kick off in some old library. Nope. It begins on a sacred and pretty isolated mountain out in Arizona. You gotta picture this. This was not some casual afternoon hike. The author paints a picture of a really dangerous trip to a super secretive location. Mount Graham isn't just sacred to the Apache, it's also home to the Vatican's high-tech telescope. The intense security, the warnings, it's all meant to make you feel like something really, really important is being hidden up there. So, what did they find at the top of this heavily guarded mountain? Well, according to the book, the answer has a name that immediately makes you go, wait, what? LUCFER. Yep. It's a hugely powerful infrared instrument attached to the Large Binocular Telescope, which happens to be right next to the Vatican's own observatory. Now look, scientists love coming up with clever acronyms, we all know that. But the author argues that this particular name, that's no accident. And this is the million-dollar question the book keeps coming back to. Is it just a quirky acronym from a scientist with a dark sense of humor? Or is it something more? The author's pretty clear he thinks it's a huge clue to the real purpose of the research being done on that mountain. And get this, as if the name wasn't strange enough, the author was floored by how nonchalantly the astronomers on site talked about seeing UFOs. To them, it was just another Tuesday, a routine part of the job. But for the investigation, it was a massive, stunning admission. Okay, so we've got a creepy telescope name in casual UFO sightings. But how does this all connect back to the Vatican's actual beliefs? Let's get into the theological arguments. This quote right here is a cornerstone of the book's evidence. It's from a top Vatican astronomer, and the claim is that he suggested humanity might one day look to aliens for salvation. I mean, that's a pretty radical idea, and it definitely goes against traditional theology. And it gets even more specific. The book points to a theologian who supposedly suggested that if we make contact with aliens, it would force a complete rereading of the gospel. The idea that the gospel itself would need an update, that is profoundly controversial stuff. So you see what the author is doing. He's stringing these statements together, from alien savior to rewriting the gospel to extraterrestrial brother, and he's using them to argue that this is a coordinated, top-down effort to prepare the world's 1.2 billion Catholics for alien contact. But the book doesn't just look to the future. It claims this whole scenario is deeply rooted in our distant and some might even say mythical past. Okay, so let's talk about the Nephilim. These beings from the book of Genesis are absolutely central to the author's theory. The text describes them as these hybrid creatures, the children of a union between the sons of God and human women. And here is where the author makes another huge connection. He points out that the very same Vatican astronomer who talked about alien saviors also brought up the Nephilim as a biblical example of non-human intelligence. For the author, this isn't a coincidence. He sees it as the Vatican laying the theological groundwork for what's coming. Exo-Vaticana draws a pretty stark parallel here. It puts the modern alien abduction phenomenon, with all the stories of genetic experiments and hybridization, right next to the ancient Nephilim story. The argument is that while the language has changed, the basic story is exactly the same. And this is where the whole narrative comes crashing into the present day, blending those ancient biblical stories with 21st century science. So the book's big conclusion is that we're basically entering a new Nephilim age. Only this time, it isn't beings coming down from the heavens. It's scientists in labs blurring the lines between species. The author claims we are repeating the very same actions that, according to Genesis, led to a worldwide catastrophe. And to back this up, the book hits you with this number. Over 150 human-animal hybrid embryos were reportedly created in British labs in just a 3-year span. This is presented as hard proof that this isn't just theory, it's actually happening. And the potential goals of this research are honestly pretty disturbing. The author cites a report that talks about research that could lead to animals with human-like consciousness, animals that could give birth to human babies, even animals that could look or talk like us. For the author, this is nothing less than the modern-day creation of Nephilim. So what do we do with all this? Exo-Vaticana weaves this incredibly complex story, tying together Vatican astronomers, Project Lucifer, ancient giants, and modern genetics. Is it a real prophetic warning about a coming deception, or is it just a brilliantly constructed modern myth? The author has laid out his case, and now it's up to you to decide.